Hi bag builders, it's Diane from Spencer Ogg Sewing Patterns and thank you for joining me again. Today I want to share with you the secret of avoiding the wobbly zip. Yes, the pesky wobbly zip that can ruin the whole look of your bag at the end. So let's get started. So here are two examples of zips. This is a perfectly straight zip that's been put in with a perfectly straight seam. This is the wobbliest zip in Wobbly Land, and the difference is incredibly simple. On the straight zip, the stitch line is perfectly straight and the zip tape is perfectly straight and running in line with the seam. The stitch line on the wobbly zip is undulating and uneven, and in some cases the zip has moved and the zip tape has pushed upwards, and that's what gives you the bubbles on the front when you turn your bag through afterwards. So I'm going to show you what you can do before you sew, the preparation that's needed, and then how we actually stitch it that's going to give us that perfectly even zip. So grab your outer panel and lay it down flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to baste the zip to the outer panel first. I always find that makes a massive difference. Now I'd lay my zip with the top edge in line with the zip tape, and because it's the front panel I'm going to lay that zip right side down. Now I don't use pins on zips, it's one of my pet hates, and I'll show you why. As soon as you put a pin through that fabric and zip, you've caused a lump or a bubble, and that's something that's going to show afterwards. And the more I do it and the more things move on, the more I'm adamant that you should never use pins in zip application. So just bear that in mind, it does make a big difference. So the choice is really using double-sided tape, which is really easy. You just put that on and lay your zip on top, and that's going to give you a nice firm ground. I tend to use wonder clips, cheap and easy. And I tend to use them upside down for applying zips because you can the curved bit helps you pop it underneath, but the underside is flat, so it's holding that zip flat against the fabric. So just move along and clip it in place. If you're using a hugely long zip like I am here, it's great, you can just clip along and keep it all flat. If you're not and you're just using the size of the fabric, then don't carry on clipping over where the zip puller is, because that immediately is going to cause another bubble. So you can see it already. So that zip tape has moved down. So that means once you've sewn over that, that'll be a rise at the top of your bag in the zip. So take those out, move your zip puller along to where you've already clipped, and then clip the rest of your zip tape. You can, if you like, draw a line on it. It's not going to do any harm. Nobody can see it. If you're using stretchy fabric, then it's worth interfacing the fabric as well, even if it's just at the top. So we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to base stitch this first side on. So I'm using an Atelier, a Janome Atelier 7 here, and I've attached my zipper foot. If you have got a zipper foot, do use one, it's much preferable. If you don't have one, you can use a regular foot and move your needle position as far left as possible. But a zipper foot is much easier to work with. We're going to baste this one side on first, and we're going to baste it on within the seam allowance, and by that I mean smaller than the seam allowance. So when we come to stitch the zip on in earnest, we're going to be using the zipper teeth to butt that foot up against, but we want this as a basting stitch to be non-visible afterwards, so we're going to move it out slightly. So we'll just put it out there. So we want to sew as straight as possible. We don't want to undulate. As I say, you can draw a line on there if you want, or you can use the edge of your tape as a guide. We want to make sure that the zip tape doesn't shift in any way. So take off our first clip and we'll do a back stitch at the beginning. And then we'll just sew our way along. So slowly, there's no rush. Just make sure that the tape stays even and straight all the way along. When you get to your zip puller, literally just raise your presser foot and whiz that back that way. Put back down, make sure you're keeping it straight still. and carry on along. Take your clips out as you get there, or if you're using double-sided tape, obviously you can just leave that under. There we go, and backstitch at the end. And that's that first side basted. So back to the table. So we have our perfectly basted in place zip tape on the outer panel. Now I'm going to grab the lining piece. I'm going to lay that down flat. And then with right sides down, I'm going to lay the outer on top of that. Now what I like to do is leave just 1 millimetre, 1/8 of an inch of the lining showing up above our zip edge tape. So you can see as you clip it on that nothing's moving. And if that's going to stay in a perfect line just sitting above, then you know the whole thing's going to line up. So again, back to your wonder clips and start clipping in place along that line. Again, we want to get past the zip puller if you're using a zip that's only the length of the bag or the pouch. So once you get to where your zip puller is, pull it past the section you've already clipped in place, and then back to pinning, making sure you can still see that odd millimetre at the top there of the lining fabric. And now we're ready to sew again, all in place. So I've placed this back under the machine and I'm working so that the zip teeth are still facing towards the top, because it's much easier to feel that way. And if you keep sight of that little bit of lining that's sticking up all the way along and keep that, your millimetre, you know, outside the edge, that's always going to stay in line. It's going to keep everything in line. So let's start up here. Now I'm going to butt my foot right up against the teeth. Start with a back stitch. And I'm going to feel my way along there. And I want to keep in line with those teeth the whole way. If you find it a bit fiddly, you can always use a stiletto. Remove your clips as you go. And you can feel where those zip teeth are and keep them in line with your foot all the way along. Keep sight of that little bit of line in there, make sure it stays even. Keep sewing straight, no undulations here please. When you get near to your zip puller, then we want to move that out of the way before we get to it. So raise your presser foot, lift up, move the zip puller to the other side. Just as an instance, if you are using a regular foot or you're struggling to get past a zip puller, there's no harm in actually backstitching, taking the whole thing out, moving it and starting again. Nobody sees it from that side, it's inside so it's hidden. But because we're using a zipper foot, we can move it easily in this case. Move it out of the way, back down, press the foot back down. And carry on along. I do find these stilettos very useful for a number of things, I must say, since I found them. Carry on right to the end. You'll see that bit of lining is still showing all the way at a nice even level. See at the end, back stitch again. And there's your zip complete. Let's take a look. So once you turn that through, you should have a perfectly straight zip. Now we'll take that directly to the ironing board and press that out, but as you can see it is nice and straight. Now I think we'll give that a little top stitch as well, just so you can see the finished result. So I've just pressed those seams apart now and you can see we've got a beautifully straight zip. You can repeat that with the other side, and then just to finish it off and make it look perfect and straight, we're just going to top stitch the edge. Again, you can use your zipper foot as a guide. Obviously I wouldn't be using this colour of cotton. Just work your way along, keeping an even distance. And that finishes it off with a beautiful professional finish. So I hope you found my zip tutorial useful and you'll join me again soon. What are you waiting for? Go sew!